is blowing out. I'm just going to get to my right page 19. 2.84 versus 1.4. It's also 2.84 below. It's blowing out. Are we going to, at the 6 month mark, would you realign some of the budgets so that at the end of the year there could be some balancing up?
With the way the budget's set and how we collect our rates, with very limited ability to do that. The transport is funded through general rate and through Waka Kotahi's 51% contribution on subsidised maintenance. So you do have a very limited ability to move that around and balance it. What it means going forward is there's future rates will need to be adjusted to reflect to recover that.
So I guess looking at it from a risk point of view, we'll need to make sure that the committee has full awareness of that and is working with their risk. They are blowing out, but there's the work that needs to be done. And I guess some assurance from the committee would need that they've at least got some idea of what they're going to do with that. I guess that's where the risk side for us finishes.
Yeah, and definitely from my mind, the big risk here is, yes, there's a financial implication of us going over, but there's a greater risk that we don't undertake the maintenance that we need to undertake.
Yeah. And the done one on page 18 is just explain again how the consultancy and professional fees are spent and recouped. I didn't quite pick up what you said.
Oh, yeah, sure. So what we do is we're short-staffed for processing of resource consents. We outsource that. With resource consents, the way we charge the fee for it, we're able to recoup the cost of the staff engaged in it. So yes, while we're spending more on consultants, we're able to then charge it back.
So there'll be a revenue line in there somewhere that crosses.
Yeah, you'll see on the previous page, about halfway down the income, there's fees and charges regulatory, which is up 1.36.
Yep. Thank you.
Good questions. Sam.
Thanks. My comments are around the presentation of data to us and comparing what we're seeing here, which is what we normally expect to see, to what we saw at the meeting last week for transport and infrastructure and for community services as well. It'd be nice to know that across all reporting to, whether it's audit and risk or other committees, including council, we have the same level of reporting and the same style of reporting, so that there's not like lots of different things that we're always looking at. And it felt like last time there was a lot of minutiae that we were shown in a report that was unnecessary. So looking for reassurance if we're going to be lifting things, reporting to committees back up to this sort of level, which is in line with where we are. And then in the transport meeting, there was a big there was a dump of information verbally with nothing to back it up other than a verbal report. And to me, that didn't meet my expectations around where that sits. And in here, you've got the explanation really carefully of what's going on and provides us to actually see what it is, consider it before a meeting, and then come prepared to think about what spending 100% of the budget 6 months through the year is really going to mean. So just looking for confirmation around what your expectations are around reporting to us. The resource consents and building consents has already been raised, but field plateaued and any improvement there, and all gone slightly backwards from where we were. So yeah, wanted some reassurance around what that's going to look like for us. And the property separation as investments and how it was raised, the lands under irrigation around Pines, I think also sits there. Where do we sit with ensuring that any transition to Three Waters doesn't capture land that shouldn't unnecessarily be transferred out of what councillors would consider our investments into what the Three Waters guys just pick up as land that they think's theirs. But
yes, on that last point, there's a program underway, and we're working on resurveying all of those blocks, including Rayburn Farm, etc., Pines. A lot of the work has already been previously done, which is good. So it's really just a matter of now formalising this and moving forward, so that we are very clear on what goes where, and keeping front of mind with DIA that the commitment that the primary purpose of the land is where the land goes. So where we've got a swale, which is part of reserve, then it sticks with us as the reserve owner. or not reserve manager, and DIA don't take those things. So we're being very clear on understanding the primary purpose of a piece of land.
And on the first matter, so after the 2 meetings last Wednesday, we had about an hour's debrief and talked about lessons learned, and there were a number of those. So everyone was getting into pioneering space, if you like. So we talked about continuity of information, where things are complemented, also pre-meeting briefings, etc. So yeah, we're pretty confident that we learned a lot from that day.
Cool. And the reporting then back to this committee, the work that you're doing, Calvin, that you said already started around the property, will it come back here? There's tens of millions of dollars of land. Whereabouts is that reporting going to sit?
It was intended to go back to the Finance and Performance Committee, but I think if you look at our risk register on what is as a risk, we would attack it here as well as a risk matter. Yeah.
And what's the time frame on that?
I need to come back to you on that, but it's well and trained. Yeah.
Thank you.
No questions, comments? Summary from me, I think, with the overlap of these subcommittees and the reporting that's coming up, I still think this is a useful report for us to see and have the confidence to be able to ask questions, and hopefully management won't get too disgruntled of answering the question 2 or 3 times, but I'd rather that than us collectively miss. And there is some overlap. I mean, you've got to be able to work through that report to then be able to almost understand the strategic direction of the Treasury report. So I think all that context and background is relevant. The other thing I'd say, coming to, I think Sam made a comment about risk. This is an audit and risk committee, although in the terms of reference, it more alludes to the setting us up for success around the framework and, is there a good risk management process? We are still a risk committee, so we still need to be able to, if there are big risks front and centre, then we still need to have the mandate to be able to work through those, and that one being very relevant. So no other comments. We will have a mover for the finance and performance report, please. And a second. Actually, just on that, do we need to move and second it when it's just FYI? Because it's been moved and second through the finance. Oh, we still do?
Yeah.
Okay, Treasury.
Into the Treasury report, heading to page 28. Key things here: net debt has increased by 22 million. That's a combination of debt being drawn down and cash being used. Cash on hand is down to 24 million, and that is sort of where I want it to be a minimum position. It'll fluctuate up and down, but really a minimum there. Under facilities unchanged, and some of the ratios there moved slightly with an increased debt. Cost of debt relatively unchanged, and that's due to a high hedged position currently, and our investments, term deposits, you see there, have fallen in line with cash holdings. Moving forward to the debt position, if we look at total debt there, you can see the profile of when that's rolling off, and we've got a sort of a regular chunk of about 10 million coming off each year. And then later years staying a little bit lower. Interest rate risk, we are heavily hedged at the moment, which is a fortunate position to be in given the cost of debt. And you can see there the pre-cost of hedging currently is 3.4%, and after we hedge is at 2.11. So good position to be in, and our average tenure is just over 4 years. Cash investments, not too much to talk about there. The on-call at 12 million and a term deposit at 12. And you can see there the average interest on term borrowings up a little on last quarter. Debtors starting to feel a little bit more of a pinch on this, and some challenges with recovery of debt are not particularly concerning at this point, but still monitoring and keeping on top of key to debt management is often in regular contact, and being having the ability to be a little bit more flexible in how we deal with it, but generally progressing well. And when you look at it as a percentage of total rates, up a little on last year. Last year was a particularly good year, but it's relatively consistent, if not better than prior years to that. Indicators around the economy, we're still running with an incredibly high CPI and PPI, which impacts as we talked about roading before. We're starting to see that pull back slightly, but it's still at reasonably elevated levels. Interest rates will still be sitting reasonably high for a period of time, but I suspect they're going to start to roll back shortly. And what we are still seeing is a lift in that wage inflation, and it's a bit of a lag effect to the inflation number, but also if we see that rise too much more, it becomes a feeder into inflation also. So it'll be one to watch, and we are seeing, as we go through the annual planning process, the wage increases proposed for the next year from other councils being reasonably strong compared with prior years, sort of up around the 4.5% mark. So that's the report. I'll take questions on that.
Oh,
Just a real quick one. I had a lot of dumb ones, but I'm not going to ask any of them because you've so eloquently explained them. $642,000 is what percentage of total rates, approximately? Just you mentioned that was the figure, that was the rate arrears on page 32.
Yeah. So total outstanding, which includes the current and then the rate arrears. So that's 3.1%. So I think pretty around the 1% mark here or less. Yeah.
That's. I'll just make sure. It looks like a big number, but I assumed it wasn't a big number. That's all.
a couple of things from me. And even though you've been here 2 years, I can still ask you a question. So, I picked up on the pre and post hedging, which was great, and also picked up on the amount that was rolling off each year, which my eyes kind of went straight to. So do we have any interest rate exposure? This is my dumb question. Interest rate exposure after all of the hedge, or are we fully hedged? How much exposure do we actually?
We're 97.7% fixed.
Right. Where can I see? Where am I missing that?
In that page 30 on the top left-hand corner of the table.
Yeah, okay. The other thing I had, I know this has been an ongoing conversation around debtors and aging debtors, and we've always kind of discussed that there's a small amount of risk around recoverability, and that's just timing. But I guess, as you alluded to, time is still cash, isn't it, from a cash flow perspective? So I guess you kind of answered that question, but I was more thinking about, is there any other kind of activity we can put in place or to kind of speed up that process? Just from a cash flow, or does it have a negative impact on our cash flow? Is it too small to worry about?
Yeah, it's reasonably small, but environmental services in that debt table is the largest of the outstanding amounts, and it's a product of how DCs and consents are pulled together, where we issue the invoice upfront, and when we provide a compliance on a development or a building, the DC becomes due to pay. So we can't put a time frame on it. So it's a bit of an oddity, that one. Mm-hmm. Water, again, it's really around management, but we do have a very, very strong level with rates, with the ability to draw upon someone's mortgage for payment.
That's the environmental one. That was another 860. That's the, yeah. I know one other, I might have asked this before, but the term deposits all sitting in QBank. Why? What's the methodology behind that? Of it just being with one? Is it all? Have we always just use one provider, one bank?
No,
Deposits?
we've got some currently. We've got one there with BNZ, and we've had others in the past. It's really best number gets the deposit, and Kiwi Bank's been the best numbers for us. But looking back, there's been a bit of time since they were. Oh no, they're 2022, so they're all around similar periods that they were taken on.
Thank you. Phil.
Yeah, just can you get your crystal ball out in Hogwartsian fashion? What do you reckon is going to happen after at say in 4 years' time? The Reserve Bank indicates that maybe that's going to stabilise. What's your read?
4 years' time's a big call because we could have been through another one of these, but gut feel is we'll see something come back down. I think we're back to a longer term average, but what we've just come through has been incredibly low on a long term basis. So we've been through a period of incredibly low interest rates, and the interest rates where they're sitting now are not abnormally high in a long run scenario.
Yeah, I guess, and that leads really nicely onto my next comment. I guess we're going to have to need to keep a real close eye on that as we get close to that 4.12 years, because the if that 3.4% hedge goes to 4.3, or the other way rather. No, there's no 4.7. That's going to have some big difference. Yeah.
The other thing to remember is we've got Three Waters transaction coming up shortly, which will materially change that debt position. Yeah.
Questions? No other questions on the Treasury report. So I'll have someone move the Treasury report, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. And a seconder.
Yeah.
Thanks, Phil. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's it. That's 52 minutes. Right. Can I have a resolution to move into PX, please? Thank you, Sam. Seconder. All those in favour?
Aye.